Hello everyone. In today's lab, I'm going to cover a number of different unwrapping tools. So primarily we're going to touch base on the spherical unwrapping as well as the camera-based unwrapping. I'm also going to cover the move and sew tools, so you can get a little practice and hands-on with that. And then this will be the first assignment that you're being graded on for actually submitting your screenshots with your normal specular and diffuse textures applied to your objects. So we're going to do two little models here, very straightforward, very simple, but let's go ahead and dive into it. So I've got an open brand new Maya file here. I'm going to create a sphere. I'll scale it larger just so it's easier to see, and then I'm going to go to my panels, saved layouts, and Persp UV editor. So with that open, I had to deselect and reselect so you could see the UVs in here. With that open, you can actually see what the UVs are. So if I wanted to, I'll click on this little shaded display, and I also want to touch base on this UV distortion. So if I click on it, you'll notice the blue means it's going to be heavily distorted. I started to touch base on this topic a lab or two ago, and then white is great. White and red are going to be really good, but you'll see as you go through this, I'm going to show you a little bit more about that and how important it is, and that goes back to that checkerboard I showed you. In fact, let's assign a new material. Go to, it really doesn't matter, Lambert, and I'm going to go to my color over here, click the little checkerboard there, and I'm going to click the little checker here. So I'm going to turn on my shaded display, and you'll notice my sphere here. So in the middle where it's red seems to be most accurate, and then as you go up and down, you'll notice these wavy little lines, and that's because it's being distorted, and as you get closer to the top, you'll notice you're getting a lot more distortion in there. So we want to kind of clean that up on any model. I mean, is this terrible? Absolutely not. But could it be better? Yes. So the way that people typically are going to unwrap most spherical objects, the thing that comes to mind the most, and I cover this in my Modeling 2 class, is the face. When you're unwrapping a face, something like this would never really work well. You would want to have it unwrapped differently. So I'm going to touch a couple little points on that. So getting into this, we are going to do a under my modeling tab here, I'm going to go to my UV and spherical, and the other way I can do it is holding spacebar, go to UV and spherical. So you'll notice those checkerboards got a lot smaller, but you're also going to notice that it is larger than my 0:1 ratio, so that's why. So if I scale this up, I'll get a lot more checkerboards and, obviously a higher kind of resolution, if you will. However, it needs to fit in this square. So the first thing I want to do is go right into that square. And let me undo that real quick so I can show you. If I didn't already bring this up, the top points where these end caps are have this triangle effect. Already probably mentioned, just want to double check. The edges around the cap are all unique. So you'll notice that when I highlight on this edge also highlights because it's the same edge. They're just cut. And I like to think of this as a t-shirt. So clothing, if you will. But if you look at my shirt, I don't know if it shows well, you'll notice I have a seam that runs down to the shirt or to the shoulder, and then that shoulder runs around. Then there's a seam underneath, I think. Yep, there's another seam there. Sometimes you'll have seams running straight down the side here. So with that being said, that's how they sort of sew and stitch clothes together. And this would essentially, using the same reference, I hope this makes sense, is the same edge on both of these. So if I were to separate them. But anyway, that's kind of the best visual way I can think of wrapping your brain around this. So you've got these edges, they're all the same, they're all on the end cap, and we want to try to clean it up a little bit. Now, let's do that again. UV, just want to give a little explanation of where we're going with this. Spherical, make sure my object's selected, spherical, and you'll notice now I get a ton of distortion. You see that from the checkerboard right here in the end cap here, probably on the other one as well. Yep, you'll see a lot of weird things happening in here, right? So for the most part it looks pretty good, except when we get to the top, and our top wasn't that great before. But let's go ahead and I'm gonna go to my tools, select my move UV shell tool, and you'll notice when I unwrapped it, it actually became larger than my 0:1 ratio. So I want to bring that down. And now you'll notice I still have that weirdness going on, and that's because these all come to a point. Now with your UV toolkit, you can actually access these tools, I think, right up here. Yep, modify unfold is what we would be using. If you go to your UV toolkit, go to unfold. The first thing I typically always do, not always, but most of the time, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to click unfold, and you're going to see that I still have some weird distortion going. And you'll notice here on the top part, some of these edges are a little looking weird, right? But now I'm starting to get a little bit more continuity, if you will, on my squares. Now, this isn't going to be perfect because it's just kind of impossible to do unless you were to separate each individual polygon and try to get it to be. But it's not going to be exactly perfect, but it's going to be most, I would say, most modelers, employers, and things like that, how they create this. And I'll see if I can pull up an example of a face texture for you before I end this part of the sphere texturing, just to show you how that's the most common way I can think of that a face is modeled or unwrapped. So with that, now I've got a pretty good start to this. The only thing is that I've got a couple of edges here, and I swear every time I do this, it'll give me maybe 2 here instead of 3, but this time it gave me 3. And the way to fix that, and it looks like, how many do down here? 3 as well. So I don't know. Yesterday I tried this just for the demo, and it was giving me 2, and then one time it gave me 1, and then today it's 3. So I don't know exactly. It's a little unpredictable, but it's always going to give you this base general shape. But I'm glad it kind of gave us a little extra to do. So we're going to click. I like to click on my arrow tool first, and then for whatever reason, I'll be trying to click an edge and it won't work. Whenever I click on the arrow tool and then come back and go to my edge mode, it will let me. So the first thing I want to do is I want to cut this edge. And all we're doing, think of it as scissors, just cutting right down that edge. This one right here. So if yours looks a little bit different, just kind of follow along exactly how I'm trying to do it, how I'm doing it. I'm sure yours doesn't look too much different. It might just have a different amount of polys here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my cut sew and do cut. And now what I can do with that is you'll notice now I can actually, even though I didn't show you before, maybe I should have. I think that's before I cut it. If I click here, it always comes with it, right? When I switch to my edge mode and then I go cut and cut, which you can also find in here, cut and sew, cut, auto seams, all this stuff. We're going to do it with the cut and sew today. Now if I switch to my little UV, yeah, I can move it off of that line. So that's how you're going to start to create your own custom UV shells. Now I'm going to also, I want to move and sew these over here. So I'm going to select this edge, and you'll notice they're highlighting and selecting over here as I do it, this edge and this edge. And I'm going to go to tools, and I'm going to go to, or modify, where is it? Cut and sew, there we go. It's under cut and sew, and then we're going to do move and sew. And now it moves it for you, and it sews it and stitches it together basically. So same thing down here, we're going to do the same thing. this time it doesn't look like I need to make an extra cut there, so I'm just going to go ahead and do cut, move, cut and sew, and then move and sew. And now I've got some weird distortion here. Let's turn this off for a second. So what it's showing me is that I'm getting really strong distortion in those segments. Yep, right here. And that's okay, because now what I want to do is I'm going to go to my tools, move UV shell tool. I'm going to click and drag over the whole thing. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another unfold, and I'm just going to go ahead and click this unfold. And now I'm going to get much cleaner results and this sort of perfectly looking sphere. So it's basically as if I took a ball and I cut it around one side. If I took like a basketball, right, and I cut down the middle line right around all the way to the other end, and then sort of kind of pulled it apart and laid it down on a flat surface, it would look something like this. And that's the result we're going for. So I have them all coming to this point. Now if I really wanted to take it a step further, let me see if it's on this side. I do want to do it, so I'm going to switch to my arrow tool. I'm going to hold right click, go to my edge, and I'm also going to cut this one as well. And I want you to see from before we're actually getting better distortion here. And I'm going to do cut. You can do it here as well. And then tools, move UV shell tool, and then unfold again. And you'll notice it has a little bit of a cleaner look. So 1 point on one end, 1 point on the other. Whoops, 1 point on one end, 1 point on the other. And we're just cutting around to that other point and just sort of pulling it apart and laying it down on a flat surface to get this look. So that's using the cut tool in unwrapping, the sew tool. The move and sew is my personal favorite just because it moves it for you and sews it together. So anyway, now I've got this here. You'll notice my UVs or my display map here is changing quite a bit while I am moving it around. Same thing with scaling. But you'll notice that now when I look at this, I'm starting to get a little pull towards the end, but it's not terrible. You'll notice for the most part, this is going to happen because I have it right at the top. But this is pretty much how you would unwrap anything spherical. So let me pull up an example of a face 3D face texture map. And images. So to give you an idea, this actually includes the neck, not just the face, but let me pull this over here for you so you can see. You'll see this is actually, it's kind of creepy, isn't it? This is how they kind of unwrap a face, and you'll notice at the top, on the face, they'll come down a little bit more on this edge at the top because it's just going to be the hair or hat or something. They usually come down a little bit more, so you're going to have it start, that seam start a little bit lower. But that's kind of the effect you get. Let me just blow one of these up. There we go. That'll work. So you'll see that you get this sort of starting to wrap around. Now this includes the neck like I was mentioning, but this is the same concept. So I hope that kind of makes sense to you, seeing it on something that we look at every single day, how to go about and do some of these texture maps. So I'm just going to go ahead and close out of this. And now what we will do is we're going to get into the polyplane, and we're going to touch base on camera-based projections. Before I move on from that, we still have to texture this, so I could assign a texture and get this to fit. I want to show you one last thing before I move forward. I want to hold my spacebar, go to UV, and this time I'm going to do cylindrical. And I just want to show you. Now your initial result's going to be a little bit different. But now if I select my UV shell and I press unfold, that is the most miraculous thing I've ever seen. It looks like it almost did it perfectly for me, but it didn't. So this last edge, if you notice, isn't moved and sewed and all that. So let me make sure I have it selected. And we'll do, I can do sew. Without doing move and sew, it's going to actually do something weird. So if I just do sew, it'll do that. If I do cut, sew, move and sew, it actually kind of does the same thing. They do different things though, I promise. And then what I want to do next is do the move UV shell tool and then run a quick little unfold again. And I just did it. You did the same, got the same results, a little bit faster, surprisingly, using the cylindrical tool to unwrap. Another thing you can do, and I just want to show you how you can pretty much unwrap anything. I could do UV and do planar, right? So it's projecting it very straightforward from the side, right? So I'm fine with it. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. So now that I have my display showed, I have my red side here. I'm going to click right down. Is it this one? Right down the middle on this side. You can see it here as it's highlighted in that little orange over the pink and the purple colors. And I'm going to do cut, sew, cut, and then I'm going to also tools, move UV shell tool, select it, and I'm going to do unfold. And again, you kind of get those same results. So you can kind of do it, even though it's a 3D object and it's a sphere. Typically, just starting out with one of those proper tools, you can get the same results. This isn't a complicated model at all. So if you had something that had parts branching out and things, you'd probably want to utilize different UV projection tools in different spots. But realistically, you can texture anything as long as you project the UVs somehow. And one last thing, just to show you, if I do UV automatic, make sure I have my object selected, it'll project it from each side, so that's a little weird. So let's go right back to it. UV, cylindrical, tools, move UV shell tool. Let's see if it changed at all. Let's do unfold. And you'll notice this time I used the same spherical unwrap tool and it did a little bit different. It's weird sometimes. It's like unpredictable. I'm going to go ahead and click on this edge. I can click sew. And then I always want to make sure the last thing I do on this thing is do another unfold. And now you'll see I've got a very clean object here ready to be placed in my circle here, or my square from 0 to 1. And what I want to do with this is if I just leave it as is and fit it 0 to 1 horizontally, it all depends on what you're really most comfortable with. But what most 3D artists would do is you're missing out on so much space. This 0 to 1, so 0 here and then 1 up here, it gives you more room to work with for whatever reason. So if I rotate this approximately 45 degrees, and you can actually rotate over here in your UV toolkit. Bring that back, transform, rotate. Say I want to rotate it 45 degrees, I can do that, right? And then you can scale and do everything in here, but some things are just better, a little bit better to do it faster this way. And I'm putting this on an angle, and you'll notice from before I'm actually getting more of that UV space that I like to have for higher quality images. And this is typically how, not on a face or something like that, that's typically not done this way, but really any other texture map that you're creating is always going to be sort of maximized out so that you get the highest quality image possible when you're doing your textures, and putting things on an angle can really help a lot of the time. So just wanted to show you that. So you'll notice how much larger it is than it was when it was just perfectly horizontal. Being on an angle gives you extra space, and you cover more of that 0:1 ratio, and you're more of the volume in that 0:1 ratio in your UV editor. So now I'm going to go ahead and apply a material to this. I can keep it on my Lambert. I don't have any issues with that on this particular lab. Let me do an edit, delete all by type history, because I've got like 14 different projections on there. And I'm going to call this Earth Lambert material. So I drew up a little sketch of a planet, basically of planet Earth, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my color. It's included in your canvas shell. Why did it do that? Color. Oh, I need to assign a new material. So that'll happen under my Lambert. When it's on the checkerboard, it shows you the two possible colors, which we're not going to do that. We're going to assign a new material. Lambert's fine. Select on it. Click on that little arrow. Go to locate your Earth Diffuse JPEG. And now I've got planet Earth on here. Pretty well done. So you can see what it looks like up close, but it just gives you an idea. And when I click on this, and what I did, so on your file, I might have jumped the gun on that. On your file in Photoshop, what I did was I rotated this image by pressing Control T with it selected, and then you can maximize some of that space. And you can always, I'm not going to cover it again, but you can always do the UV snapshot. So just so you're aware, that's how you go ahead and do it. Now, back to the lab. So that's the whole thing on spherical texturing. So for the lab in Maya, I want you to just submit me a screenshot. I could probably just press spacebar with your Earth selected. You can, I don't mind if you have, as long as I can see the texture actually applied to it, I don't mind if you have any of these on. But this, something like this is just fine. You can tap 6 on your keyboard, or you can leave it, yeah, if you have 6 on your keyboard, have one of these so I can see what the UVs look like. Turn on the blue one. So submit it with the blue one on, the shaded shade UV shells, semi-transparency, the second click box, not the third one, the second one. So just the second one on, as well as your, and this submitting a screenshot like this for this part of this lab is more than acceptable. But you'll see you get pretty good results that way, and I'm glad I pulled up a face to show you how most sort of 3D modelers and texture artists would approach modeling something like this. Maybe not this one exactly, but for most of the time you're creating a sphere texture, you're gonna typically do something like this because you want everything easy to work with, right? Anyway, now that being said, let's move on to the next part, the polyplane. So display the grid real quick. I'm going to drag this over. I'm going to go ahead and create a polyplane right here. Create a polyplane. It comes by default here. It's already unwrapped, but I want to show you how to do it differently. So I'm going to create a little wall here. So I'm going to switch this to 90 degrees. I'm also going to scale it. I don't need it to have all those polys on it. You can keep it if you'd like, but you can really bring this down to 1 and 1. So it's just one polyplane. They started doing that. Let's go 25, 25, 25. They started doing that a couple years ago, where they actually already pre-subdivide the polyplane for you. Originally, you would just click on it and it would pop up like this, and then you'd actually have to change it. But neither here nor there, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my grid. You'll notice I've got my texture. It's looking good, but I want to show you how to work this camera-based texturing and how it works. I think I've actually already briefly brought it up in a previous lab, but let me pull up a better example. We're going to do it on this, but I want you to see where this might really be useful. So if I pull this open and I have this platonic solid, I could probably change it all in here, but doing a automatic unwrap on something like this gets you some weird results. But if you were doing, I don't know, like a dice or something, whatever it might be, some weird kind of dice or some kind of weird star in space or something, if you do camera-based rendering, I love it. This is a pretty good example to do it on. You can actually rotate around, hold spacebar, do UV, and do camera-based. And you can do that and get the proper, because you can't get it every single one from your correct, because it's a 3D object. I'm not going to be able to get this one very well from that side view or things like that, or the top view. Some things are just going to be a little bit easier just to rotate your camera, UV, holding spacebar, UV, and go to camera based. So let's go back to Pers panel, save layouts, Pers UV editor. And now with this selected, you'll see tools, move UV shell tool. I'm getting really clean results using my camera based texturing, right? And I can do this all the way around. I'm not going to do it on this. I just want you to see how to do it. UV, camera-based, tools, move UV shell tool, drag that out. And you can literally do this all the way around. So it's going to come out pretty good, I would say. So anyway, that's probably a better example to use camera-based, but I want your end result to look like this anyway, realistically, but I can go to my face. Now I want to show you what it looks like if I do it from here. You'll see it's a perfect square here, but if I'm on an angle and I do UV camera-based texturing, you'll notice it comes out exactly as it looks in my perspective view. So what happens is it's literally going to take that projection exactly from the angle which your camera's at. So if I wanted to get this thing perfect, I could press tap F, go to my left camera, hold UV, go to camera based, and now you'll notice I still get the same exact results as I had when I originally had this thing open. But that's camera based texturing in a nutshell. So with that being said, put my little earth, I'll do it later. So I've got this here, and basically what I need to do, I know it's a perfect square. It's going to be 1024 by 1024 in Photoshop, or 2048. They're all the same scale in terms of how Photoshop reads it. So I don't need a UV snapshot on it. I just need a perfect square in Photoshop open. And I'll go over here. I have my little rusty metal file here that you can download, and we're mostly going to be touching base on Specular and Normal Maps, aside from our whatchamacallit. So this file is probably, I think it's a 4K file, so if you needed to, because it's too large, you could go to image adjustments, and let's change this to pixels, 4096. We can go to 2048 and just hit OK. You're going to lose some of that resolution, but your image file is going to be like 4 times as less in memory, especially if you're running an older computer, older software, older machine. Those larger files, if you have a scene filled with 4K images, it's going to be harder for your computer to be able to render them. So I'm fine with 1024 too. So if you wanted to do a 1024 image, but I like working with 2048. I think it's a happy medium on the lower end of textures in today's world with today's standards. So now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and I'm fine with this being my wall texture. I'm just going to assign this image, right? So if I go into Maya, assign new material, this one's going to have to be, we're going to do Arnold shader because that's what our midterm and our final is going to be used. So I want you to get used to that because we're going to use the Arnold renderer. Pixar released a couple years ago now, their renderer, because they switched to a different one or something, called RenderMan. I really don't know how to use it. It's pretty complicated. I'm sure if I had a little show me how, it would be pretty cool to use and teach and things like that, but we're just going to stick with the one that's inside of Maya, the renderer, and we'll get to rendering at a later lab as well. But we're going to go to AI standard surface in our assign new material, and I'm going to go to my attribute editor. Let's do again edit delete all by type history because I did some on that. This is going to be my wall metal wall Arnold material. So now I know what it is. I'm just going to go ahead and sign that because I know it's perfect size. File. You should know how to do this now. Open. And you'll see that my texture comes on right away. Now, when I rotate around this, you'll notice that this side's perfectly black, and that's because the normals don't project on that side. So this is a two-dimensional object in a 3D space. So 2 dimensions don't have depth, therefore it can't have a face on the backside, just so you know. There used to be, I don't know if they still have it. Yep, so if I do shading, back face culling, this is really the way to show you. By default, it's going to show it as black, but if I rotate around, you can't see it anymore, and that's because it's a 2-dimensional object in a 3-dimensional space. So let's turn that off. Just thought it would be neat to show you. Now, I've got that done. I want to show you how to do your own little specular map if you wanted to. One of our discussions, I think it's this week, covers this, and I figured this would be a great time to sort of incorporate that into your own tool box, tool chest, whatever, so you could pull that out whenever you'd like. So going back into Photoshop, I have my metal scratches already open. I'm going to do Control A, Control C, go back to my metal, you can do Control Shift V, which is I think paste in place from where it was previously. You'll notice this image is absolutely massive. So what I did was, let me click off this. So when I'm like this, when I have my layer on this selected for this metal scratch, I press Control T to select my free transform tool on it, and then I can hold Control and do 0. Of course, now it's not working. Control T, Control 0, and it's going to highlight or zoom out to the point to where I can see all the handles around the object. So I'm going to go ahead and just zoom this in. I'm going to hold Shift actually because I don't need this. I don't care if it is distorted. In fact, I just want to make it pretty simple. And there's my metal scratches. I'm going to press Enter after I transform it into this shape. And I'm going to duplicate my original background. Rusty metal wall. And I'm gonna hide this metal scratches. So now I'm gonna make sure that I'm on the rusty metal wall layer, and I want to make this black and white. Pretty simple to do. Image, adjustments, go to black and white, and you can do auto if you like, depending. You can play around with all these. I'm fine with it looking like that. I'm gonna press OK. Now I can also, if I really wanted to get crazy, change my levels or my brightness and contrast. Think of Legacy as like a different renderer, basically. And if you wanted to brighten it up or darken it up or whatever you wanted to do, you can. Press auto. I'm good with that. I'm going to go okay. And now I've got my original rusty wall, like so, in black and white, right? Played with the settings a little bit, but that's to give it a little bit more read. So in the darker areas on my specular map, it's going to have less shine. On the brighter areas, it's going to have more shine. And now with my metal scratches, I don't have to do anything to this because it's already on a black and white scale. So it's already gray, black, white, you know what I mean? So now what I'm going to do with this one on my metal scratches is I'm really just going to play around. I could change some of the levels, and I might just do that, but I'm going to go to my metal scratches first, that layer, and I'm going to go to see which one I like the best on my little blend modes here. So I'm on normal, darken. I want to be able to see some of those scratches, screen, but I also want to be able to see through the background as well. So I'm just going to see which one I like the best. So it's probably going to be, I like that one. You can actually really see those scratches really well. I'm going to go with linear light. And I'm really good with how it looks. If you wanted it to be a little less strong, you could bring down the opacity. I'm okay with it being at 100. I think this is going to be a great example to show you how the specular map reads it. And I'm going to go ahead and save this out. Control-Shift-S to save. And this is going to be my specular map polyplane in class example. And I saved out the Photoshop file. I'm also going to go to File, Export, Export As. This can be a JPEG. Perfect. Click Export, and that's fine. Okay. Bada bing, bada boom. Now back in Maya, I want to open that specular file, and under my metal wall Arnold material, under the specular tab, go to the color and click that little checker box, and then click on File. Now from here, under image name, I'm going to click that little folder. I'm going to go back to locate my image, and it is that one, specular. Yeah, that should be it. And I'm going to press open. Now the default renderer really doesn't do too much on it, and I'm going to hopefully see, let's press 7. So I don't have any lights in here. Let's create some lights. Let's go to Arnold, Lights, and Sky Dome Light, and press 7 on your keyboard. And I'm not getting too much to pick up, but I promise you it's there. Let's try a different light. And it might just be, let's try one of these lights first. So, or next, create over here in the top left corner, lights, directional light. And let's drag this away and let's rotate it around. I'm gonna make it at 90 degrees. Oh, negative 90 degrees. Could even bring it up on an angle or something. That might work out a little bit better. So here, under my attribute editor with my light selected, I'm going to try to bring up some of this, and I'm hoping it'll pull up in the viewport. I know it used to. I hope it's still capable of doing it. And let's select on our here, and it's maybe I got to play around with some of these settings. just don't see it. Is it too dark? I'm going to try to assign a different material. I just want you to be able to see this, how it works. I think I did the specular one, right? Find out. Yeah, and then I need to assign my regular texture. Okay, that actually displays better. So we're going to switch it from an AI standard. And maybe I bring down, play with a little bit of the oh yeah, there we go. Let's see. Just want you to be able to see it well. You can see the scratches in there actually as I kind of hover over it. Let's create one more polyplane. You don't have to do this. I only require one. I just want to show you the differences. This is how I'll know the difference. I'll just leave the grid on this one and assign new material, blend. Actually, no, I'm going to assign a Lambert to this one as an example. Assign a Lambert. I'm going to assign that same file to it. Okay, so yeah, you can start to see the difference. And if you're not getting enough of the effect, we can go right back into Photoshop. And maybe this is too dark. And image adjustments, let's try to have some of those stand out a little bit. Let's try using legacy. All right, so Control Shift S, yeah, that's fine. And file export as JPEG, export, save, yes. Back in Maya, I can click on this, go to blend, click on that little specular and do reload. You see how it changed? And maybe if I turn the light down a little bit, we can see it a little bit better. And you're starting to see it a little bit better that I changed some of the settings in there. Maybe if I make that wall, open. File open. Maybe. Oh, hold on. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop. All I did was darken that image and go to my blend, reload it. You'll notice it's darker. And now you can really get a better look at those scratches on there. I just wanted to try to show it to you. This rusty wall might not have been the greatest example, but you can actually see them now. Where this one doesn't have a specular map and this one does, and you'll see you're getting some of that shine and some of those scratches in there to give it more of a realistic look. The last thing we're going to do, sorry for the time it took to do that, but I wanted to make sure I was able to show you a good example. Another thing we can do is and I want to show you really quickly if I add a new layer and just say 3D modeling or metal wall, whatever you want to say. I just want to go ahead and show you. Let's see if I can find a quick little cool. Of course not. Just want to show you how you can sort of make these things. Trying to center it somehow. Guess I don't have center snapping on or something. Good enough. The color should make a little bit of a difference. If I want, let's make it white. And now I'm going to save this out again as that same image. Oh, I always do that. File, export as 3D modeling, save it out as a JPEG, hit export, and save. Okay, so here, I know this video is taking a little bit longer, but here I want to go back into my my little normal map thing here, and I'm going to import. Where did I save it to? Oh, with text. Okay, open. And I want to show you what it's going to look like with that on there. Let's see if I invert the height. It indents it. So if I wanted it indented, if not, you'll see how it works. So let's try. And strength. I want that 3D modeling with the exclamation point to show up pretty well, so I'm going to hit download from there. I think that should do it, but I also wanted to keep some of these extra details. And now back in Maya on this one, I'm going to apply that bump map, file. Ooh. So if you went ahead like I did, you need to click on that little arrow again, and then there's a way to go back to tangent space normals. Oh, right here, nope. There it is. So you click on the image, you click on this little file, bump mapping, where it says file 7, click that little arrow, and then click the one on the bottom. And now I can switch it back to tangent space normals, which I should have done from the beginning. I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself. And then I'm going to open that folder. And I just got to find that. There we go. It's looking a little crazy, but let's go ahead and open it and see what it looks like. So now you can really see how that bump map works. Got a little bleed through. I'm not worried about it. You can't see it from a distance, but you can see the difference on it night and day. Added a little light. Now let's just see what it looks like with 6 on. 6, it's way too dark. I'll put that light back in the scene, and let's just see if I can strengthen it up. So you can see that I'm getting a lot of that pull through. I mean, I know it's really scattered right now because I chose a pretty rough little image for a metal wall, but you can see that depth bleeding through. So for this one, all you need would be let's see if it isolates. I want you to submit something like this. Yours doesn't have to look identical to mine or have 3D modeling in the center. You can choose whatever text you'd like. I actually don't mind if you don't even use the metal texture that I supplied. You could do a different one, but make sure you have all 3 of those, normal, specular, and diffuse, and then submit a screenshot that looks like this, and you can turn off. Now the funny part is I never even added the text to that, where I have it in white. I just added the normal map without the text, and you can see how much different it looks. But if I go back into Photoshop, I'll call this with diffuse map. Oh. And I meant to do file export as, JPEG is good, export, save, open up Maya. Under my attribute editor, I'm going to switch the color. We're going to switch it to this one, and now you actually see that I've got the white text there that I created the normal map from. But just to give you an idea how these things work, I know we've already gone over, so a lot of this was redundant. We've already gone over how to add, convert specular maps. This is the first time we've done it in Photoshop, where you just kind of make it black and white and things, so that was something new. But I want you to submit both of these. This one can be just like so. I want you to have your attribute editor open so I can see that you've added your color map, your bump map, aka normal map, and your specular map. I'll be able to tell by this little black arrow, and then have your UV editor open and your UV and your perspective view, and you can submit a screenshot that looks just like this. Have your object selected and just submit it just like that. So that's everything I've got for you in this lab. I know I covered a lot of little things that we've already basically done before for the most part. We just went a little bit further down the rabbit hole with it. So we're going to submit the sphere of the Earth. So something like this. Have the little blue thing on it, the second button here, shaded, so I can see the blue display over your texture map. So something like this will be more than fine. We didn't have to add any additional maps to this one, just this polyplane. And feel free to, if you wanted to do a brick wall that had different text, but include the text so I can see that you've added the bump map really well. I can tell from just looking at this that it's been added, but make sure you add, I'd like you to add some text to it. Diffuse, normal, specular map with an object, and then on this one you can turn it off so I can just see, and make sure you have your attribute editor with your material here, and I'll call it rusty wall material. So anyway, with that being said, I don't have anything else to cover. Whenever you, if you have any questions, obviously shoot me a message. This took a little bit longer than I expected, but no worries. If you have questions, concerns, anything, please reach out to me right away. Canvas inbox, fastest way to communicate with me. But other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed this lab and can take a lot away from it in terms of texturing. We covered quite a bit. We covered the spherical and a couple other ways to unwrap. We also covered how to create your own custom UVs. So cutting down the edges, moving and sewing those different edges to create your own custom UV, and then the unfold button, which automatically unfolds it for you. There used to be a really longer way to do that. You'd have to have this little slide bar open, and you click and drag across the screen with your UV selected, and it would like kind of crumple and unfold, and all that kind of stuff was kind of weird. I'm sure it probably still exists in there, but that way is just so much faster. If you do run into any issues, technical difficulties, please message me right away. Please don't wait to the last minute. I know this, if you're watching this last minute, but please don't wait to the last minute. These labs can take some time. As you saw, this one took me a little bit longer than I had expected, but that's what happens when you get into this software. So always try to get ahead of it so you don't get behind it, right? But other than that, you all have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something about 3D modeling and texturing, and stay tuned. Thank you so much, and have a good one.